Hey y'all, Noah. Thank you for joining the channel. Everyone who reads it must converse. There's been some good, feedback on a couple of my videos and things that I've gotten that I figured I would do an artist spotlight, an author spotlight on Flannery O'Connor. I love Flannery O'Connor. I have a lot of works to help kind of work into her texts and stuff like that. It's no substitute for just reading the work itself. Her stuff is really accessible and really cool. So I thought I'd just, when it comes down to it, when I talk about Flannery O'Connor or show a work, I get I get a lot of response, and half the response is something like, "Oh my God, I love Flannery O'Connor. Glad that you're, speaking on her and showing some of her work." And then the other half is, "Who's Flannery O'Connor? Where should I start? What should I read?" Something like that. So I figured this is the way to go. Let's do an author spotlight. Now, I'm going to show her works that she did during her life, talk about it a little bit. And then I'm going to show some of the not her primary works that she did in her life, like her letters and other stuff like that. And then at the end, the last part, I'm going to show some critical works that I have that have very, very much helped with getting your bearings on what she's really getting at. Flannery O'Connor was a really deep author, guys, really deep, even though her stuff is completely accessible. So, first off, just her works, and then the little extra, and then some critical works. So let's just go right at it. I have up here my copy of Flannery O'Connor's Violent Bear It Away. That is a first edition hardcover of Violent Bear It Away. One of my most prized, works that I own. I love Flannery O'Connor, so I love, having a book that was printed, that she saw. Maybe, she saw it, it passed by her at some point, and she looked upon it with just happiness that was her work in print. So, it just makes me happy. So, Flannery O'Connor was a student first and foremost. She took her writing very seriously. She was a student of writing. She went to college for it. She went to a writing school, a postgraduate from college writing school. Was very, very active in that. And upon graduating from that program, had honed her skills enough and had an agent, had got an agent, and was a writer, and was established as a writer. She published some short stories, and she published her first novel. So when she was in college, she wrote short stories and things like that for her classes and all that. And those kind of things either are a couple of them, maybe her short stories got fleshed out into a short story of hers. But most, were kind of in the same vein and actually got compiled into her first book. So, and that first book is Wise Blood. This is the first book that Flannery O'Connor published, and just from the back here, I'll say, Wise Blood, Flannery O'Connor's haunting and astonishing first novel, is a classic of 20th century literature. The story of Hazel Motes, a 22-year-old caught in an unending struggle against his innate desperate faith. He falls under the spell of a blind street preacher named Asa Hawks and his degenerate 15-year-old daughter Lily Sabbath. In an ironic, malicious gesture of his own non-faith, and to prove himself a greater cynic than Hawks, Hazel Motes founds the Church of Christ Without Christ, but is still thwarted in his efforts to lose God. So, what we have in Hazel Motes is a figure, a character that comes up in Flannery O'Connor's writings. It is the reluctant preacher. Someone who is actually fighting against God, their own faith, fighting against their own spirituality, whether that be intellectually or whether that be just so independently minded that they don't want to have faith in anything. And then and with Hazel Motes, we have the example. Hazel Motes, the main character in Wise Blood. We have an example of someone who is so against faith, having faith, that he actually becomes an antichrist preacher and starts a church, ironically enough, starts a church to preach against churches and against faith. It's a very dark story. It's a very dark character that we're following, and I can't suggest it enough. It's a great first foray into Flannery O'Connor. Now, what people mostly come into contact with first is her short stories. I have the complete short stories here. Flannery O'Connor was prolific at short stories. She wrote a lot, in her short life, and one of the most popular and the one that most people come in contact with is A Good Man is Hard to Find. A Good Man is Hard to Find is a sledgehammer of a story. It is shocking, it is grotesque, and it is very, very powerful. So, when it comes down to literary devices and the sheer ability and power of writing, Flannery O'Connor is pretty much unmatched. There's a lot of great writers. There's a lot of great short story writers that are really good, but Flannery O'Connor was good every single time, and you'll definitely enjoy yourself getting something like this and just going through some of her shorter works. The short story Everything That Rises Must Converge is one of my favorites of all time, and actually is the reason for the name of my channel. I play on that, So I hope you enjoy it, and some of the short stories in here, like I said, The Peeler, The Train. Those two short stories are early short stories by her that are actually chapters, early chapters in Wise Blood. They've been reworked to be chapters in Wise Blood. So she put out a short story collection, A Good Man is Hard to Find, that has A Good Man is Hard to Find and also other short stories. And that's the only short story collection that she put out in her life. And other than that, she was writing short stories. She had some published independently in different publications, but she only had that one short story collection in her life published. So really, you can find a copy of A Good Man is Hard to Find, but really, this is what you want. This has every short story that she's done. So that's the way to go for short stories. And then once we've touched on Wise Blood and her complete short story collection, there's only one more work that Flannery O'Connor put out, one more work of fiction that she did in her life, and it is a masterpiece. It is much better, I think, than Wise Blood, and it is something that shows Flannery O'Connor as a more mature writer, fully in her power, and that is The Violent Bear It Away. This is my reading copy, paperback copy. The Violent Bear It Away. We meet another reluctant preacher. How this goes, I'll just read from the back here. In O'Connor's second and final novel, the orphaned Francis Marion Tarwater and his cousin, the schoolteacher Raber, defy the prophecy of their dead uncle that Tarwater will become a prophet and baptize Raber's young son Bishop. In a series of struggles, as Tarwater fights an internal battle against his innate faith and the voices calling him to be a prophet, while Raber tries to draw Tarwater into a more reasonable modern world. Both wrestle with the legacy of their dead relative and lay claim to Bishop's soul. All of this is observed by Flannery O'Connor with an astonishing combination of irony, compassion, humor, and pathos. So, just in what's being said there, we touch on a couple of things that are sorry, that are totally crucial to an understanding of what Flannery O'Connor does. The ironic twist, and not to say humorous, sometimes it is, but the ironic twist is just something that is like a little bit of a trademark with Flannery O'Connor. She sets it up, and then she turns it around. She turns it over on its head. It's an amazing thing to witness, and to witness the different ways that she can employ that device across her work. Enough said. I don't want to go into and give any spoilers away. What I want to do is more give ways to work into, ways, what Flannery O'Connor's about, to just give it out to people who maybe not know. So that's it for Flannery O'Connor's work that she put out in her lifetime. Very, very short bit, but we also have a huge collection of her letters. This is called The Habit of Being, Letters of Flannery O'Connor. This is letters to her friends, letters to her agent and back. And in this, we get so much of her ideas, her thinking, her process. She was a perfectionist at writing. And we get a really good sense of what Flannery O'Connor was about, where her beliefs lie, and she was nothing if not a devout Catholic. Very, very, very much a devout Catholic, and just by reading her stuff, it's easy to make the mistake that maybe she's, because her characters are very anti-religion, anti-spirituality. They're materialists, and they fight against that. But you see how it works out for them, and so it's an easy mistake to make, to think that, well, she's not very religious. What she had was a very deep personal spirituality. So there's her letters. That's another resource we have just from her life, and that's a great read. Very, very interesting read. If you like Flannery O'Connor, if you like anything by her, her letters are definitely something you want to read and get into, because she was an eloquent writer, even just in these daily letters to and from her agent and friends. And then other than that, there is The Habit of Being. This is Flannery O'Connor's library. Resources of Being. I'm sorry. The Habit of Being is actually a work that is in her library that she drew upon a lot. Now this has has every single bit of what she had in her private library when she died. She left it to the University System of Georgia, to a branch that is down in middle Georgia. She lived in Milledgeville, and she gave all her books over to the university, and they have them still in a room, the Flannery O'Connor room. And in here we have every single book that is in her library, and all the marginalia that is written down in every single work. This is things like, her opinions about stuff, her critiques on certain things that are being said, and also, circling and things like that. So, there's just all kinds of everything. I'm happy to say that I own quite a bit. But, there's normal stuff. Dostoevsky, William Faulkner. She had, just all that kind of stuff. Some William Blake. And mystical authors like Teilhard de Chardin. A lot of that kind of stuff. Old Greek poets. Aristophanes, Homer. She had the Robert Fitzgerald translation. She had the Nikos Kanastakis. Sorry if I just butchered that. His Odyssey, the modern sequel, some of his works, and just a huge amount of reading. So she was a writer. So what do writers do when they're not writing? Well, they read. That's how it goes. And this is just a joy to go through, and to see what her influences were. All right. So enough for the kind of things that were there in her lifetime that we can draw on to work our way into Flannery O'Connor. Other than that, there's a collection of things like essays on wise blood. There's a lot of critical essays on things like wise blood and The Violent Bear It Away, and her different short stories, So this is a collection of essays on wise blood. Wise blood and the consumer culture, wise blood and wise blood and wounding and sacramental aesthetics, and framed in the gaze, Hazel Mote's wise blood and Lacanian reading. Anti-angel aggression in wise blood. There's a lot to explore with Flannery O'Connor's work. Like I said, she was a perfectionist, so she packed a lot in there in her plain speaking. And then I have a collection of critical essays on her short stories. This is A Good Man Is Hard to Find. Is the title work that is being treated in here. But this also is going into a couple of her other short stories. The Last Judgment and Revelation. There's more. So I would say that her stuff, it's dated in the language. She was writing this stuff 50s, 60s, So it's there's definitely some not PC phrases and words that are used all the time. But that's how people talked here in the South. She's talking about people that are a man or a woman of their day that are not putting on any airs. She's not here to do that. She's here to illustrate the truth of life in the South. There's a young picture of Flannery O'Connor on there. Hope you can see that and enjoy that. And then we have an older picture of Flannery O'Connor on this one. This is called The Gospel According to Flannery O'Connor. This is an amazing little work. It's very small. You can see. What do we got? 125 pages, thereabout. 125 pages, and this is very, very perceptive in Flannery O'Connor's use of the Bible. She was, Hazel Motes, this kind of reluctant preacher figure that crops up in in many of her in many of her stories is very much modeled after a Pauline figure, somebody like Paul, the Apostle Paul, something like that. But also, she will take biblical stories and use them as a framework for certain things, and just turn them on their head. The ironic reversal, that kind of thing is, like I said, a characteristic of her of her whole writing style. And the terrible speed of mercy. People in her stories receive the grace and the mercy of God in a very violent and horrific way sometimes. And it's hard to wrap your head around that. So something like this definitely works well to give you an idea of where and how Flannery O'Connor is using these things. And you'll see the peacock all the time in association with Flannery O'Connor, because Flannery O'Connor had a peacock farm. She loved the peacock, and what a divine little creature. So another critical work of Flannery O'Connor in the light of Catholic ideas is Voice of the Peacock. This is by Kathleen Feely. She is a Catholic, the president of the College of Notre Dame in Maryland. And she wrote this just exploring Flannery O'Connor's works in the light of Catholic ideas. So I have recently acquired that. Can't wait to get into it. And then we have The Art and Mind of Flannery O'Connor, The Added Dimension. Now, Flannery O'Connor also did, in college, cartoons for the school newspaper. And there's a lot to be explored in those kind of things. She was using the kind of ironic reversal in a visual form, in a less mature way, even back then. Very, very cool to go through. And this is also a newly acquired work from me, so I can't wait to go through this. But things like the search for redemption in Flannery O'Connor's fiction, Her Rue with a Difference, Flannery O'Connor and the Southern Literary Tradition, The Novelist as Prophet. These are the different essays, the titles of the different essays in here. And these are themes that just kind of come out all the time. Flannery O'Connor's Clarity of Vision, Flannery O'Connor's Sacred Objects, a collection of statements, Flannery O'Connor in her own words. She did give a lot of lectures, and you can look up online and on YouTube here, and you can hear Flannery O'Connor reading A Good Man is Hard to Find. There's definitely something to that. Very enjoyable. So if you've never heard it, or if you've read A Good Man is Hard to Find, or even if you haven't read it, look it up. Let Flannery O'Connor give it to you herself. It's very, very awesome to hear her reading that aloud. And she actually does a little talk then on the critics of her day called her, a grotesque writer. And she said, anything that a Southern writer writes, if they write the truth, the rest of the world is going to look at it as grotesque. Okay, we're, the South down here is a little more hardcore, just a more backwoods, kind of, hardcore. I can't, I don't want to go into it too much, just saying what it is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I tried to give a good survey of Flannery O'Connor and the kind of things that I used to get into her works a little bit more. But really, you can just read her stuff. It's easy, it's right there, given straight to you. She was a masterful storyteller, short stories and her novels. So happy reading, guys. Hope y'all enjoy your experience with Flannery O'Connor. Any questions or comments, hit me up. We'll uh, we'll get into some more detail if there's some to be had. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you on the next time. Bye, BookTube.